Welcome. Stick around if you want to learn about the art and philosophy of beautiful movement mixed with evidence-based exercise science. We will be having tough and inspiring conversations with other coaches, experts, artists, and athletes. Our goal is to challenge myths, explore concepts, and engage in healthy debate as we dive deep with intrigue and curiosity. I'm your host, Hannah Deutscher. I've been teaching dance, Pilates, and yoga for over 2 decades. And what I've learned is that movement can be the joy that integrates us all together. When we can trust and express ourselves through our bodies, we are unlimited in our ability to change ourselves and our communities for the better. We, as movement teachers and coaches, have the power to help people experience this for themselves. Okay, everyone, let's dive in. Exchanging ideas and changing people's lives one session at a time. This is the Pilates Exchange. Hey everyone, we are back to the Pilates Exchange. Today, I thought we'd do something fun, or funny, I think it's fun. We're doing some myth busting. We got 12 myths that I'd like to talk about and give you some tips on how you can work on debunking these myths within your classes and your studios. So, I think that Pilates is one of the most misunderstood movement practices out there. There's all sorts of myths about flexibility, strength, gender, the effectiveness, and it could really create some barriers from people wanting to try Pilates and experiencing its full benefits. So that's why I decided to dedicate an entire episode just on some of these myths. I'm so curious afterwards if you think that I've missed anything. We might have to do a follow-up because I'm sure that I've forgotten some. So just hit me up, send me an Instagram message or send me an email. I'd love to chat about it. So what I think is important is to not only talk about this, but also think about how these myths are affecting your classes, the mindset of the people that are coming into your classes. I'm sure that some of this you can imagine, and also just like your overall numbers that are in there. So that's why I think it's important. Let's get into it. One myth that I was thinking about is Pilates is just for flexibility. Yeah, I mean, you know this, you feel this. If you are practicing Pilates, you know that it's not just for flexibility, but there is that mindset out there. And so I think it's important to talk about. It's primarily, for me, about strength, control, and functional movement. There's some nice research in 2016, a study by the Journal of Bodywork and Movement Therapies found that a 12-week Pilates program significantly improved muscle strength and endurance in adults, even more than the flexibility games. That's just really great. Like we always talk about is building strength and length. It's definitely not just about touching your toes. It's about moving efficiently and with control. So when a client asks when they're coming in about getting more flexible, I think that maybe you should reframe the goal. Instead of saying like, let's work on flexibility, maybe try saying something like, let's build mobility and strength together so you can move more freely and more powerful, right? So like just reframing the way that you're saying it also gives them powerful tools in their mind that they know what we are working towards. So it's not just about touching your toes. So there's other like active flexibility drills that you would be working on anyways, like exact leg circles or scissors, so those hamstring pulls, so that we could really show the difference between flexibility and functional movement in there. There's a lot of exercises that you could pick out, and during your session, you can be talking about it if you want. We're moving on to another one. Pilates is only for dancers. Oh, because I've studied a little bit of Pilates history, Joseph Pilates history. I started with boxers, gymnasts, and soldiers, and not just dancers. Today, it's used by athletes, office workers, seniors, rehab clients, patients, like everyone uses it, from people that are recovering from stroke all the way through your Olympic athletes. So we know that it's not just for dancers. Us dancers, we really like it because we know how effective it is. And I think that's why we jumped into it. Of course, also the history of it, where his studio is located in New York, the dancers gravitated right into that area. So it does make sense that there are a lot of dancers in there. That's just part of the Pilates history. And of course, there's a lot of former dancers that do become Pilates teachers. And I think that helps to enhance that myth. But we do know from lots of different studies that Pilates, the method itself, can help improve performance and reduce injury risk in all sorts of different athletes, including professional soccer players. And yeah, I think that's important to always in your classes think about how that helps. I mean, even in our studio, we've had professional soccer players, so football players. Here in Europe, we say football. We've had professional runners. We did have one basketball player. He's quite tall. So the equipment that we have is not exactly perfect as far as the reformers. We need a longer reformer for him, but he did get a lot out of his work with us. He has since moved. We have had professional swimmers, synchronized swimmers. Like we have even had a national frisbee player come in. So all sorts of athletes can get benefits from Pilates. It's not just the dancers when we're talking about the types of athletes that are going to be helped from this. So you might want to think about, so here's our trainer tip, is you might want to think about diversifying your marketing images, maybe highlighting, even if you don't have those types of athletes in your studio right now, there's Google, there's so many great sources and different stories of different athletes that you can highlight them, what other people have achieved through Pilates. It doesn't mean that they're in your studio, but you can still highlight the gains that other people have had using that. So you can also diversify that marketing image by different genders and abilities, just so you break that stereotype. So I do want you to share stories from non-dancers so that it attracts a broader audience. I also want you to share stories of people that are non-athletes, just a normal human being, a human body that's in there. Because, let's face it, like unless you are, like my studio is cooperating with the ballet company that's here, for the professional ballet company that's here, but not every studio is going to have a ballet company attached to it, right? So we don't, we have to work hard to make sure that we are not known just for the dancers that come in to us, but for all of the other people that come to us. And the vast majority are not professional dancers as far as our community goes. So let's break that myth down. Another big myth is you need a reformer to get the full benefits of Pilates. And the reality is that mat Pilates is the foundation of the practice. Joseph Pilates designed the mat work before the equipment, and he believed that you can achieve strength and control without those machines. There's been lots of research that went into mat Pilates significantly improving strength, balance, coordination in older adults without any equipment. If a client comes in and thinks mat Pilates is easy, I want you to challenge them with more advanced body weight control exercises like teasers, rollovers, single leg bridges. Just make sure that they understand where that challenge is. And then it's a little bit on you to educate them on how that mat work requires more core activation, because there's no other external resistance for that support. So if they feel it in their bodies, they will believe that it's not just, theoretical stuff. But for a lot of people, they're going to have to feel it. And that's good. That's the good stuff. So you do not need a reformer. Reformers are fun. You don't need all of the other equipment pieces either. They're fun. They're great, but it's also not necessary for a person to have a great workout. Another myth, Pilates isn't real strength training. Reality, I find, is Pilates builds functional strength when we're using progressive overload, time under tension, and full body engagement. So I do believe that if you are not progressively overloading, then it isn't strength training, right? It's just great movement. That's great also. But if we want to improve muscular endurance and core stability in the trained athletes and normal people and prevent injuries, then we need to get into that progressive overload. We do know that strength is not just heavy lifting. It is also about control, endurance, and power. And I think the method can challenge all three. As the trainer, I would love for you to be thinking about how you're incorporating that within the method and your programming. that's on you. We got to figure out what you are working on within your programming. That's exactly it. You need to understand what the client is trying to get out of it. How are you doing that over a long time? Where do we need to progressive overload? And another way that we can make sure that we're doing some strength training is you can highlight the eccentric control, maybe slowly lowering in the leg lifts, maybe. Yeah, I want you to just think about how you can incorporate the eccentric control in there, because we know that that type of movement builds more strength than traditional weight training in some cases. Another way that you can help bust that myth is by tracking their progress. And you could actually encourage it on their side. Like, can you hold the plank longer than last month? Write it down. Like, maybe you can track it for them. How many push-ups can they do? Can they do one exercise longer or bridging longer than they did the previous sessions? So if they see those strength gains over time, then they will definitely know that it is strength training. Let's move on to our next one. Pilates is only for women. Well, I mean, come on. We know that's a myth too, because Pilates was created by a man, Mr. Joseph Pilates. It's widely used by male athletes, military personnel, sports teams. Yeah, so I think that the myth gets there because there are so many more female studio owners. There's less and more female teachers. There's less male teachers. So in our marketing, naturally, there's going to be more females that are highlighted there. But, you might want to think about how that marketing is, what you're doing. What are your pictures of on Instagram, on your website? What's the language that you're using? If you'd like to teach more men, you might need to think about having a Pilates for Men class. Maybe you need to highlight more of the performance benefits of power, agility, mobility, and start talking about how that's going to help different types of sports, or even how it could help a male body with less back pain, for example, because that's often a problem in the male body. Check out some other studies that have been done. There's a few for the male rugby players that have been incorporating Pilates into their training, and they have had fewer injuries and improved core strength. All of this is super easy searches on your side. See what makes sense for what you would like to achieve with your studio and your classes, and then you can highlight that so that you have that real information to give to your clients. So no, Pilates is not just for women. Another one that we hear all the time for the people that have never tried it. Pilates is easy. Ha ha ha. We always, that saying that goes around, if Pilates is easy, you're not doing it right. Pilates is deceptively challenging when done correctly. Those slow, controlled movements demand more muscles than those faster reps. We can definitely significantly increase core control, core muscles activation to some of the standard gym workouts. So how do we get over that myth? If someone is first coming in to your studio and you want to make sure that if that's the first thing that they've said, oh, Pilates is easy, but my friend said that I should try it out. I would say challenge those doubters by slowing down movements. Make them hold a plank a little bit longer or a teaser a little bit longer if that's what they're capable of. Teach progressions so that they see how those small refinements of the movement can make that movement much harder. It's not about taking the first time a client is there and destroying them. I am not advocating for that. But I do want you to understand that if a client is coming in and that is the first time that they are in your studio and they have said to you in that intake time that they believe that Pilates is going to be easy, it is your duty to show them what they can get out of it, that it is a strength building and you can make it easy, but it doesn't have to be. Okay. Depends on what that client needs. What are their goals? And that is also part of your responsibility to try to figure what that is. Another myth, Pilates alone is going to give you a six-pack, or that Pilates is going to give you a six-pack. Our reality is that Pilates strengthens the core deeply, of course, but visible abs depends on so much more. Nutrition, genetics, overall body composition, We know that Pilates improves the core strength, core stability, core endurance, but body fat percentage is the biggest factor for visible abs. So there is a lot that goes into that. We never talk in our studio about Pilates giving you six-pack abs. That is a marketing fallacy. It would be unethical to say that because it's not just about it's not about a six pack. The trainer tips that I would give you is educate your clients that a strong core is about function, not about looks. And that look, for some people, for most people, achieving that visible six pack is a very unhealthy place to be when we look at what the overall body composition needs to be like. So that is not something that I ever even joke around about in my studio because I know how fast that can lead to some really unhealthy lifestyle choices. So we talk about function, we talk about overall body confidence. If we're looking to build more core strength, then we encourage clients to track their gains, not just aesthetics. So we're tracking how long, for example, how long can you do a plank? How are you feeling in your body? That seems to do a lot better because Pilates alone is not going to give you a six pack. We have the myth that Pilates and yoga are the same. No, they're not the same, right? We know that. They're both mind-body practices. And I've done episodes on this before. I've done a lot of blogging about this before. I think that they can both learn from each other. Pilates and yoga are very interesting practices and they can educate each other. I think that they go hand in hand. But Pilates is going to focus more on strength, biomechanics, and controlled movements, while yoga usually and should incorporate more of the spiritual elements, static postures, meditation, breathing exercises. And yes, Pilates teachers, I know that we have breath practices, but yoga does way more. And there's more concentration of the breath practices that are there. So they are similar in that, but it is not the same. To bust through that myth, we can explain the mechanical differences. So maybe it's that Pilates incorporates more core engagement in every movement, or we think about it more, we talk about it more. We focus a lot on joint articulation, spinal alignment, while yoga is probably going to emphasize more breath work and sustained postures. If a client says, "Oh, is this like yoga?" Or then maybe you could say something like, yoga is great for mindfulness and static flexibility, but Pilates is strength-based and movement-focused. That would be one way to use it. Yes, they are similar. No, they're not the same. The mind-body part of it that you need to be focused when you're working out is probably where we can really see those similarities, though. Another myth is that you need to be young to do Pilates. Now, this one I find really interesting because, and I include this is because we've had recently a whole lot of phone calls coming into our studio with people saying, I'm this and this age. Am I still allowed to do Pilates? Yes, Pilates is for all ages. We can use it for injury recovery. We can use it for fall prevention. We can use it for mobility training in older adults. There has been research done that found that older adults who practice Pilates twice a week can improve balance, core strength, and posture, and thus reducing the fall risk by up to 42%. We have clients that start Pilates in their mid to late 60s, which is great. Our oldest client is now mid 80s. And all of those clients are really mixed in with depending on what they need, of course, but they're mixed in with all of our other populations. It might be interesting for you to have a class that is more geared towards that population, but we know that 70 is not 70 for each person, right? It can look way different. We're actually just going to be highlighting a client of ours, Cooper, who is 75. He comes to, and he does his workouts 3 to 4 times a week, and he's fitter than some of our 20-year-olds. So it really, of course, just depends on the person and their lifestyle, but we can think about if you would like to have a specific class for that clientele and do, if you're just getting people in moving for the first time, you might want to have modifications for your older clients. Maybe they need some seated movements. Maybe they needed some balance support in there. You can use some age-inclusive marketing in your websites. So showing diverse age groups in your studio promotions would definitely help. And if an older client is hesitant about starting, what we do is we assure them that Pilates is really about moving well at every stage of your life, and age is just a number. That's the way that we go about it. You can think about it. Is your clientele right now, do they span the ages? Is there something that you need to do to include more people in there? I think that it is important to bust through these myths. I want you to let me know if I've left out anything. I want you to, as you're thinking about busting through the myths within your studio, your classes, get into the science of things. Educate your clients with evidence-based facts. They're all out there. It just takes a minute to research. Show, don't tell. I mean, use progressions, use slow movement, use core activation so that they feel it in their bodies. It can't be theoretical. If they feel it, they will understand it. Highlight different, diverse success stories. Showcase men, showcase athletes, showcase your rehab clients if that's where you're at. The people who have benefited, the real people that have benefited from your studio, from your classes, are the ones that I would suggest that you start highlighting in either your social media or your website, however you want. You can think about using relatable comparisons. Compare Pilates movements to strength training, sports, or functional fitness. Or even better, if there's exercises that you're doing within the class, tell them how it's going to improve their normal daily life. Is there a movement that you're doing that looks like something that would help their gardening or picking up their grandkids or it really just depends on the person and what they're looking for. But all of these movements, all of these exercises can be translated into daily life. And I encourage you to look for those things. Encourage skepticism. I don't want you to be just preaching to the choirs. People that are healthy skeptics that come into your studio and basically say, prove it to me. Good. Those are the people that you want, because once you got them, once they understand what they can get out of your classes and the Pilates methods, you have them for life. Challenge them with controlled movements that expose the muscle imbalances, for example, in their own bodies. I want you to embrace that sort of challenge and run to it, because that's where the good stuff is. That's how we start to help people understand how beautiful this method can be. So I'm so curious. I want you to tell me, have you heard of these myths before? Which ones are surprising to you? Which ones didn't I get to today? Maybe we need to do a whole nother one. I'm wishing you a wonderful rest of your week. I will see you soon, and happy teaching, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. A great cost-free way of supporting us and the podcast would be to give us a 5-star rating. You could also look down into the show notes and grab any one of the free resources for teachers. I hope to see you next week on the Pilates Exchange. Happy teaching, everyone.